The merchant payments piece, I think, is slightly different. I find a lot of the discussion today maybe a little bit rarefied. The world that we work in Vendorcom is very much out in that consumer merchant interface, and stuff happens quickly. There's high volume transactions happening. There's actually very, very good infrastructure in place in terms of credit cards, and while we can all go, oh, well, we need to find different ways of doing it, and we've got perhaps potential problems with passwords and PIN numbers and so on. It actually works, and it actually works for the vast majority of people most of the time, and it is actually part of our critical national infrastructure, and if it failed, we'd really be in a bad way. I just want to throw out a few ideas, and then hopefully we can get to some questions. The merchants actually really care about this because in the payments industry, we tend to come at identity from a position of, well, is the merchant going to get paid? Are we going to control the risk and liability of a card scheme or a card issuer? And that's a very, very one-dimensional view of things. And I think it's one of the reasons that the payment industry, particularly the merchant payment industry, whether it's card scheme or acquiring bank or payment terminal vendor or whatever, really struggles to get their new ideas adopted, because they're not actually coming at it from a position of what value add can I really offer to the merchant. Well, maybe there is a value add in that they know they're going to get paid and there's not going to be a chargeback. But identity could actually be a much, much bigger thing in helping identify and authenticate that customer coming through the door is who they were the last time, the sort of person you want to offer some of your core things to, your products, the stuff you sell, offer it to them in a more convenient way through the channel that they want to. And so I think if the payments industry could widen their viewpoint in terms of how they're actually going to try and help a merchant using the experience that they've got from an identity point of view, then it could really be quite useful. But we're talking about real people. There is a social impact. I think that point earlier is really important around this. I think we need to think about how payments is a very real world, everyday thing. Interoperability, being able to travel, being able to take your identity across border, not just in any one place. I actually think we should bring the citizen consumer to the fore in all of this, and I think we should actually look at and understand that concept of the citizen consumer, so that we can understand the dimension in relation to government. Because I think that is one dimension. And if you're wanting to use the government gateway and maybe perhaps those things once a year, there's an identity channel there that needs to be authenticated in a particular way. But if you're trying to identify what you're doing in a consumer way, a bit like you were saying on Tuesday, convenience is really going to be key. I was at an event yesterday and we were talking about graded identity and authentication, being able to have certain credentials in place for certain different types of payments. And so this is where, again, where the payments industry, the core mainstream cards and payments industry have, I think, got it a little bit wrong. They've set credentials at the core, like PIN numbers, when you personalize your card, and then that has to be distributed across this wide system, creating vulnerabilities even in that dissemination of that data. And then it's all authenticated right out at the core with static information. We must move way beyond the world of static information that's set by the core organization that's at the heart of this. Surely we can get to much, much more contextual identity, where we are using big data not as lazy statistics, but actually using it. And when I look at it, the contextual stuff, it could be location, it could be value, it could be preset limits that I've established. It could be the merchant sector that I'm engaging with. If I'm buying a convenience item locally, if I'm buying a pint of milk in the Tesco's local across the road, I actually just want to go and pick it up and walk home with it. They know who I am. I want something to tell them I've paid or I'm good for that money. And it's the same at that end of the spectrum as it is at the other. I was out with one of the world's largest fashion stores, head of strategy and customer experience of this fashion organization, they don't want to ask their really high value customer for a PIN number or for some really, it feels dirty at the end of the day. I know you've bought all this stuff, you're paying $3,000 for a trench coat, you're whatever you're doing, just, we know you're good, just go. We've got, you've given us some direct access into your bank account, so let's just make those things happen. The device interface that I use, there's lots of fingerprinting around that. Add all these together and you've got way better credentials than you'll ever have. Like commercializing this is going to be is a big question, because there are so many organizations with a finger in the pie, and I think we need to look at back to that question of who owns the data. Again, I say bring the consumer, the citizen consumer, to the fore. With the data protection regulations, we're going to have to get explicit consent in each environment of use, each specific situation. How are we going to do that? It's just unreal. It's a very, very difficult situation. And what's really going to be the motivation to open up the dialogue, say for instance with Amazon. Say if we go to these data stores and I've got I'm owning my credentials, and I say to Mr. Apple, Mr. Amazon, Mr. John Lewis, or whatever, yeah, I want to interact with you, I want to transact with you, but I'm prepared to give you these credentials. Now, how do we validate those? And again, we've touched on some of that today. And this is where new, fairly novel solutions like Jumio and Insignia and solutions like that are coming out, I think could transform it, where I can take a picture of my driving license and I can take a selfie. I think we can get to selfie security, where I can do that. We've got my driving license here, I can do that, I can take a photograph of me, it can compare that, and I'm sorted. I can do it with if they go, no, I'm not really sure about that. My driving license photograph is 20-something years old, because DVLA insists on using the old photograph I had of my previous, even though I have upgraded my passport with a new passport photograph. How are we going to link all these things together? I want to choose what data is provided. We also need to work out where those trusted validating sources are going to be. Again, we heard from Verizon at a conference I was chairing yesterday about this, and they're in a good position to be able to validate some of this. Government might be, but I'm not really convinced that the average consumer is going to trust government with this sort of thing. The real value of my credentials and me being prepared to give my credentials to anyone else is based on what value they are offering to me. Government offers me virtually zero value, or certainly perceived value, even as an intelligent citizen of this country who is interacting with government and government services a lot of the time. I don't see any great value in that. The vast majority of the population out there has probably got a Russell Brand mentality, and we're not very far from that sort of revolution. And why would they then give their credentials to a government? It just smacks of Big Brother, and it will actually move people further and further away from engaging with government and government institutions. In the same way as gating the internet will be a problem, creating a government gateway to identity will be bad for business for exactly the same reasons. Now, I've got loads and loads of other things I've talked about. Like on Facebook, I don't have my real date of birth. That's not trying to mislead it. Well, maybe it is. It's 5 years younger than I really am. But if NHS decided to be confident in Facebook's authentication as a way of engaging with that, does that mean I'm going to lose out on all the services that old men should get? I hope not. Maybe I'll have to change my Facebook, my date of birth. But it seems ridiculous that Facebook should need that.
It makes you a statistical anomaly, because I read something I was reading earlier in the week, that on Facebook, women lie about their age but men lie about their height more than their age.
Maybe I'm not. I don't feel.
Gravitas, you see.
I don't feel so insecure about my size. But
Well, I like it anyway.
so I wonder, are there any other key things here that I wanted to cover? I think we need to get back to real value add. Just picking up on what we heard earlier, I think it needs to move into, rather than the payments industry just saying, yeah, you'll get paid. It is loyal. It's moving into loyalty, being able to personalize offers and so on. And getting away from this distributed environment. I think one of the comments, I can't remember who made it earlier, was about it's dangerous to let the consumer have too much say in this. I actually think technology should take over and should parameterize everything. I think that's dangerous. I think actually I could get on a political soapbox about this in terms of, I think the ills of society are based on the fact that we've pushed so much into a statutory control, whether that's on the police or social services or teachers or whatever. And I think if we could actually focus in on actually making the citizen consumer accountable for some of their own identity, that would be really good. The Consumer Credit Act, actually, whilst it's a really, really important safety net, I also think it's one of the single biggest problems in terms of identity and security, in that people are just profligate with their security and their identity. If we actually had some sort of mutual liability, and I think this is where the dialogue needs to happen. Where is that mutual liability in this?